So my name is Nick, and today I have the pleasure of being at Alan and Viv's house, here to chat with you both.
Hello, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. All right, excellent. I'm really excited to chat to you both today. So the first question I want to ask, and this is an individual question, so you can decide who wants to go first. But when do you remember God first becoming real to you?
Well, there's so much of the story that I would tell the first 30 years of my life.
Okay.
Were very difficult.
Okay.
And through God moving in circumstances, someone came to see me and led me to Jesus after a lot of my struggles with the thoughts of God. I come from a very dysfunctional home life. My father was a man who had lots of problems himself. So from a young age, 4, 5, 6, I saw my mum being slapped about, where my father never laid a hand on me, but if I upset him, which was quite easy to do, he would totally ignore me as if I didn't exist, not talk to me 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
So that had quite an impact as a young child, which went on as I grew up. And then for me, things started happening, unusual feelings in my head, which I think would be recognised today, but then mental or emotional illness was a taboo subject.
So now you look great for your age, Alan, but if you don't mind, how old are you?
85, coming up for 86.
Wow. So we're talking about, at this stage of life, is this sort of you're now going into your early 20s, teenage years?
Yeah.
So what decade are we talking?
We're talking about the 60s, early 60s. So these weird feelings, which I kept to myself because I thought I'm the only one in the world and this is me, I discussed it with my GP. So he suggested to me that as a voluntary patient, I enter a psychiatric hospital as a voluntary patient, and they might be able to help me. So I entered into Several's Hospital in Colchester, and things in this area were still new then, the treatment of these things. They never dug deep into anything, but all they did was to pop pills into your mouth, and I had umpteen pills, all had side effects, to try and cover what was going on. And then I had ECT, electric treatment, no effect. And then I saw one psychiatrist on one occasion who suggested a prefrontal lobotomy,
right,
which was very common in the 50s and 60s if they couldn't find an answer to the problem. But as soon as my own GP heard of it, he pulled me straight out of the hospital.
Wow.
You know, I'm so glad to say. So I was under him for quite a while, and he suggested I go into another hospital in Edmonton, the North Middlesex Hospital, where there was new types of treatment. So I entered that willingly, and it was just a few of us who would get together with a psychiatrist and talk, group therapy, which was a new thing, and also expressing ourselves with painting, which was really amazing, which came out of that. He was a super psychiatrist. Dr. Sainsbury's, an Australian guy, so friendly and helpful, so different from what I'd experienced. That some of us who really loved him, we called him our dad.
Wow.
And to me, I suppose he was the dad that I'd never had. And he would encourage me, and I would go for a walk around the park with him, or go up the pub with him. Totally different psychiatry. And he put me on some barbiturate called sodium amytal and Librium, which did help me a bit. And I think after about 9 months, I managed to come out of the hospital and even struggled to get back to work.
Right. What did you do for work?
I'd done an apprenticeship as a compositor in the printing trade, setting lead type, which I loved.
Yeah.
So when I got back to work, I was still working in the city, which was stressful travelling on the underground. So although I took a drop in wages, I got a job on the Ilford Recorder, which was nearer. It was much nearer and all that travelling. And in those days, jobs were so easy, you know. It was a case of, oh, we'd love you to start. How much do you want, and when can you start? And so I worked at the recorder for quite a while. It was still struggling in my head, but I was just managing to hang on.
So when you say you were struggling in your head,
it was just depression, and I think anxiety, so much so that I did have suicidal thoughts.
Okay.
And there were times when I would stand on Mile End Station waiting for the next train to come in to think, this will finish if I jump in front.
Wow.
Thankfully, that never happened. And you just wanted to get away from this turmoil. You know, the world seemed at times to feel unreal. And I suppose this was an escapism, in a sense, from this horrible life. And I think in my heart, although I was suicidal, I think I'd given myself up to 25 years, and then I would definitely finish it, because I didn't want any more.
Wow.
But a certain young lady, while I was working at the recorder, went to the cafe one day opposite, and these young ladies from the hairdressers come in, and I said to them, who's that little lady who comes out of the forest, the one with the auburn hair and the green overalls? Oh, you want to know her? She had nice legs. And I said, no, I don't want to know, because I was very quiet, shy, introvert, no confidence. Because then these two ladies who were called Shirley and Hazel from there, they got onto Vivian, and they were like a dog with a bone.
Wow.
They were determined. I was holding off.
Wow.
And so it went on for quite a few. Vivian knew, and we'll tell your side of the story.
I was going to say, can I pause it there? So you had a very difficult upbringing.
Yeah.
You saw domestic violence. You also were ignored and just totally given the cold shoulder by your dad for long periods of time.
For all the time, yeah.
Wow. His mum was lovely.
I had a lovely mum.
So that led to you feeling a deep depression.
Insecure, didn't understand why, didn't relate the two.
And you'd kind of decided, by the time I get to 25, I'm going to end my life.
Yeah.
So Viv, what was the first 25 or so years of your life like?
I was an only child, and quite naive and quite shy. I never used to think that a boy was going to fancy taking me out, because I was a little squirt. And Mum and Dad were okay. It wasn't a lovey-dovey house where I was, I would say. It just wasn't. My dad liked his wallop. He wasn't a drunkard by any means, but he used to upset my mum. But that was just normal, ordinary sort of family. But I always remember sort of thinking in my head too, even with my toys when I was a little girl, my teddy bear had to know about Jesus. My parents didn't go to church,
right?
But probably I went to Sunday school, Sunday afternoon thing. But I can remember, I always thought that how wonderful Jesus, you know, someone that loved people. I can just, in the back of my memory of just knowing, if anyone said, you know, oh, you're stupid, believing in all that, I didn't like that, hurt me. Didn't like that.
So do you remember first meeting Alan? Yeah.
So because when I heard that someone was interested in me, I thought, oh, really? Can you mean it? And so I was to keep hoping to catch him on the bus on the way home. I thought, if I see him, will he speak to me? And he didn't. And I left my jar of jam on the bus, what someone gave me that day, because I was so worried he weren't going to talk to me. And I would get home and realised, where's my jar of jam? It's on the bus. Oh, because he's a bit slow get going. Yeah, so eventually I think I must have written you a letter, because I'm an auntie at Dr. Bernardo's at my age. At 17 upwards, I was auntie at Dr. Bernardo's in Barkingside. And so I was supposed to take this, one of the young lads, he wanted to go to London.
Yeah.
Not that I'm the best person to clue about London, but I was going to take him on my day off. But when I knew Alan was on the lookout, oh, he can come with me, that must be better. not knowing he's terrified to get on a train or a bus or anything. So, you know, I put that to him. He just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that." But we met eventually on a Friday evening at the Heathway bus stop. Because of how he is, the state of him, his mum had to come down that bus stop as well, taking a backward sort of stand, because the fear in him still was so strong. And because he wanted to tell me what he was like before I got into feeling any feelings for him.
Do you remember first telling
Oh,
Viv?
yes.
What did you tell Viv?
I told Vivian straight away, after all these weeks we'd met up, that we could only ever be friends because this is me, this condition. I've been in psychiatric hospital. I have these fears and anxieties, so we can only ever be friends. And by the way, that happened when I was 24, remembering that I'd set 25 as the tip-off point, but God put Vivian there when I was 24.
Wow.
And we became friends. She lived at home, I lived at home. She would come in to see me.
We lived quite close to each other.
But during that time, you know, we were friends for a long, long time, and I couldn't really... I think at first I was able to take her to the pictures or take her out, but that sort of closed in. And I know I used to say to her, look, I do love her, but if you find a boyfriend and get married and lead a normal life, I'll be broken-hearted, but don't let me mess your life up. So she wouldn't listen to me. She still doesn't.
Yes, I thought, no, it's not going to happen. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
That went on, Nick, for 11 years. She was
Wow.
my friend, coming to see me. We weren't living together. We were friends. She was shy. I was shy. So we could get on. And a very limited life. I mean, her holiday was a day out at Southend because I
On my
couldn't
own,
take her on
on my
holiday.
But we looked for different things. Although I believed in God and that, we looked at all sorts, hoping that he could find peace in his mind. And we tried positive thinking.
Spiritualism.
Well, it said on the board outside, Christian spiritualist. And I thought, well, they were saying people got healed there. So I thought, if people get healed, I want Alan to go there. I want him to go there. They were very kind people, very nice. I wasn't interested. It had to do with, you cannot speak to dead people. I don't believe that at all. So it was just for healing. I was totally selfish because I wanted him to be healed.
Yeah.
And then because I was at Dr. Bernardo's, the lady in the house, she's a very wonderful Christian. She used to take me along to some meetings sometimes, and I would come home and tell him what I'd heard, hoping to whet your appetite. And
What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was interesting. She used to tell me how her day went, and then this lady from Bernardo's took Vivian to a house church, which was the thing in about the 70s. And she used to tell me what went on in this house. Crowds of people all sitting up the stairs, singing in a funny language, playing the piano. And one time she said, hey, they dug some people in the bathroom. And she said, they're really crazy a lot, but she said, they're so nice. They're so nice.
yes, the lady from the children's home place, her brother, he used to come to visit the house, and he would always be sitting in a little room at the front of the house, not sharing meals with us and the children. And she said that's because he's fasting and praying for your Alan.
Yeah.
He's seeking God on his behalf.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had never met me, but he knew about me. His name was Michael. And he asked if he could come and see me, because in my mum and dad's house, mum and dad sat in the front room watching the telly, but Vivian and myself sat in the kitchen, so he wasn't near me dad. So Michael come to see me, sit in our kitchen, and no pressure, he just talked about photography, my interest, and then it led on to Jesus, and I think it was his third or second. He said he thought of giving his life to Jesus. I don't even know if there is a God, with all this that had gone on. So he led me in a prayer, repeat after me, and more or less I said, God, I don't know if you exist. If you do exist, would you take my life? I don't want it. Come into my life, forgive me my sins. And I give my life to God. But nothing seemed to happen. Mm-hmm. There was no fireworks or nothing like that.
Yeah.
After a while, the folks at Vivian's House Group said, look, you travel over to Leytonstone on 3 buses. There is a Pentecostal church in Dagenham which teach the same thing as we do, same doctrine. So Vivian then went to, which was called Bethel in Parslows Avenue, and she found them quite nice people.
Liked it.
And then she found there was a lady called Joan, who came with her husband, who had agoraphobia for 14 years and was now going out and about. So Joe and Joan were prepared to come and pick me up. I was still scared to go out, because for 8 years I'd not really gone outside the front door very much.
Wow.
For 8 years. That's when it was at its peak. I was afraid if you came into the house, I would go and hide in the bedroom. I couldn't speak to you or speak to anybody. So these tablets, these barbiturates that Dr. Sainsbury put me on many years before, I was just taking them galore, because in those days doctors did not check on you. So Vivian or my mum would go to the doctors, can I have a repeat prescription for the barbiturate? They just handed them over.
Right.
So the more I took, the more I wanted, Another night I would put a tablet alongside my cabinet with a glass of water, and as soon as I woke in the morning, take the tablet, take the water, then pull the blanket over my head for half hour until it sort of numbed my brain a bit. So that was many years I was on them, and what was happening, I was getting through a month's supply about every 10 days.
Wow.
But nobody checked.
Yeah.
Doctors didn't check on you like they do today. And I knew that if they found out, I would probably have to go into Worley or meant for withdrawals, and that would be something awful to have to come down.
Yeah, but in the midst of all that as well, Margaret took me to a big meeting where I actually went forward.
Sorry, jumping back.
Back a bit, and accepted it. And he said, "You see a difference in me."
Yeah.
When I actually went, my friend put her foot behind me. I think I was so shy. He was preaching about coming forward, give your heart to Jesus. And I was wanting to get out of my seat, and I was too shy. And she said, "Go on, girl, you want to get saved, don't you?" "Oh, yes, go on then, get down the front."
Wow.
And I come back to tell you all about it, and he said, "Oh, you were so full of it."
Wow.
She was lovely, but she was even lovelier.
I got all this sort of
She'd given
joy,
her life to Jesus.
all this joy come up everywhere, Yeah, so.
But meanwhile, Alan, you are still
He's
in the
I was
midst
still
of
locked in, so she would come and tell me these things. So when she went to Bethel and met Joe and Joan, they said, "Well, we'll pick Alan up," and I was still scared. So I think it was about 3 weeks later, I said, "Okay, I'll come on the Sunday evening meeting," but I was high on barbiturate. I was addicted to them. I needed them all the time. My life revolved around them. So I said, if I do come, I want to sit at the back near the door, none of this going forward for prayer and that sort of thing. So they took us, we sat at the back, and somehow I went to the front and got prayed for.
that first time.
That first time, yeah. The elders prayed for me, but and then they said, Joe and Joan said, "Would you like to come Thursday? We've got a baptism, and explain baptism." "Yeah, I'll come to that." So Thursday I went, "What about this second Sunday?" "Yeah, okay, I think I'll come loaded up with drugs again."
Yeah.
And at the end of the meeting I went forward for prayer, and the elders laid their hands on me, and my mouth opened, this shy little one, and tongues flowed out pretty loud. Pretty loud. I wasn't looking for the baptism. And from that point, I knew that God was real and I was saved.
Wow.
I was in the back row, and I heard this noise from the front. I looked down. It's gone, Alan. I didn't even know he got out of his seat.
Wow.
So I had my head down praying, and
I mean, and it just happened. My mouth opened, and the tongues were flowing out loud for loud.
They all thought he got saved that night, but he already was saved.
So So although I'd given my life to the Lord a number of months before with Michael in my mum's kitchen, boom, that was the stamp on it, and I knew, and never stopped speaking in tongues since.
So how about the medication that you were on, the mental health challenges?
Yeah. So I'm still on the medication. We then we went to a meeting. We were going to Bethel regular on a Sunday after that happened, and I think a minister came, and I know he prayed for me, and I went on the floor in the spirit, and Dawn Singleton's dad come up to me. He was an elder at the church, and he said, "Do you think God's touched you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Right, tonight, no car rides home." He said, "We'll walk to my house." And me and Len and one other little fellow called Peter, we walked from Bethel Church all the way down to Ingleby Road in Dagenham Village.
Right.
And that was a big step.
Wow.
From then, Len and Dawn's mum, Elsie, took both of us under their wing. They was like our shepherds.
Wow.
And after the meetings, lots of the young folk, with the permission of the pastor, they could go with Len to his house, and they were Bible reading and praying. And so we joined them. So most of them would have been about in their 20s. Well, you still were, but I was just in my 30s. So we was that little bit older than most of them. Now, what would happen there, Len was trying to encourage me to do a bit more so he could get one of the boys on round the block, Mark, David, Peter. Now walk to him, then walk to him, then walk to him, walk to him. That was their care and concern.
Wow.
While I was doing that, the girls are inside praying.
Yeah.
And that was Dawn's dad. And Saturday, he would then come out for a bus ride with me, go on the train, stretching me all the time, stretching me. Put me on a bike one night and rode up the road, told to go to so far, and I went further because this feels good. When I got back, I got a ruck in. I didn't tell you to do that. You do as you're told.
Oh.
So, and things were added. So things were happening in that area. So I'd not been out and not worked for 8 years. Then one day, one of the chaps in that little group, he come in and said, down the road, down Crown Street, there's a little printing shop. And I noticed a notice in the window. It says, "Wanted, part-time compositor, would suit old age pensioner." So Len says, "Right, we're going to see the governor tomorrow, so we'll have to..." I said to Len, no, I'm not ready yet. And something that Len said to me, which has always stuck with me, he said, if you wait till you're ready to do something, you won't do it.
Yeah.
So we're going tomorrow, right? So the following lunch break, he come and got me, and we walked up to and we saw the governor, saw Mr. Woods.
Right.
And we put the story before him in his office, him and his wife, and the boys were all downstairs in the printing bit. It was only a little job. We said, "Well, this is the situation. I've worked for 8 years. I've had this emotional problem, but I'm coming over it." And he said, "Oh, Mr. Fitch," he said, "come with me a minute." And we went into what we call the case room. Rows and rows and trays of type. He said, "You see that work tray there? This is April now. That goes back to December." He said, please, will you come and work for me?"
Right.
And I said, "Certainly." He said, "Look, I understand your situation." He says, "Come in when you feel you can, and when you feel you've had enough, go home." Second day I went in for an hour and a half. No problem. Third, I didn't go in the next day for some reason. On the Friday I went in 2.5 hours. He come in to see me on his way out. He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, yeah, it's great to be back in." "How many hours you done?" I said, "Oh, I don't know how." "Oh, right here." He took his wallet out. He said, "Do you want to start Monday?" I said, "That would be nice."
Wow.
Thinking how difficult it was to get a job today. Is that God?
Yeah.
Or is that God?
It's really just listening to your story. What I'm struck by is you had this. So you've had a guy who's faithfully been fasting and praying for you. This is Michael, who didn't even know you at this point.
No.
He came to visit you a few times.
To the Lord.
Yeah, led you to the Lord. Nothing changed there and then in terms of what you were going through. Through
Vivian into the scene.
Comes into the scene, starts inviting you along. She's obviously faithfully caring and praying for you. You go to this meeting and one day you are filled with the Spirit in quite a miraculous way.
Yeah.
But from then, it was still a process. It was a process of you literally.
It was never instant.
Yeah.
So then I had the job there. So we're still meeting with Len and the other fellas. So we knew John and Dawn, obviously. So John, they were part of the Pentecostal church that we were involved in. And John was a youth leader there. And every year for the last previous 2 years, and he was doing it again this particular year, 1973, he would hire a boys' boarding school during the summer period near Alpington in Kent, Chelsfield. It was a boys' boarding school, and he would invite any youngsters, any Christian youngsters from any denomination. They were welcome for a week. It ran for 4 weeks. So they then talked me into going to help out, which was a biggie for me, to go all the way through Dartford Tunnel to Kent to help out. But anyway, eventually they talked me into it, and I was loaded up with barbiturate. So I couldn't remember it. And John and Dawn took us, a number of people who were in our little group, still in
Anne and Stuart Garrard.
Anne and Stuart Garrard.
Wow.
So we goes there. Now it would run for 4 weeks, and every week John would get someone he knew, a pastor or someone he knew, to come for a week and a minister. So the particular first week when we were there, he had a guy called Ron Smith, who was a right Cockney guy, but he was now a pastor of a Pentecostal church in Hartlepool, and Ron came for the week.
Yeah.
So it must have been the Tuesday we were there, because we arrived on the Friday. The youngsters turned up Saturday. So on the Tuesday, Len Alls was talking to Ron Smith and telling him what God had done in my life. But he's still stuck on these barbiturates, which he just can't get off of. Ron says to Len, "Oh, don't worry, he's coming off tonight." Len come and told me what he had said. So he said, at a certain time, anyone who wants a touch from the Lord, be in this particular classroom, and Ron just wants to pray one for another. So he says, "Get Vivian, and I want you two to be there." So we sat there, all of us, and Ron went along.
I'm thinking, this is it.
Ron went along, he prayed for one. Different things, headaches, arm aches. And he got to me, he knew the problem, and he rebuked something. I made a noise. Then I was hands on my knees.
Hands on my knees?
And I was on my knees with my hands, I'm getting excited, with my hands in the air, and I was crying, and I was praising God, and I was laughing, and I knew, Nick, it felt like somewhere in my stomach that I knew. I just knew that I never needed a barbiturate again. 11 years I'm taking. I knew in there, not in there. And that was 9 o'clock on the 31st of July, 1973. And not one barbiturate has passed my lips since that day.
What a story.
That's God.
So Viv, you were there.
I was sitting next to him crying.
There's a lot more to it. So when I come off of drugs, when I come off barbiturate, we went back to Bethel, and I'm full of it.
Yeah.
We're still single at that point.
Yeah, I'm full of it. John and all that, so we got back, and a lot of people rejoiced with Alan, but one elder's wife, when I told her, she said, "Oh, that should happen in the church here. Not out there somewhere. Probably this time next year you'll be back on them." That was an elder's wife. But when Elsie and Len heard that, they were really annoyed. Because of the things that had happened over at Chelsfield, we got more or less disowned in the church, because things should happen in the church building, not out there. So what happened, a guy called Bryn Jones came along, and he was there for one of the 4 weeks, by the way, and he saw what was happening, and he sort of took John under his wing in a sense, and he advised John, I think I've got this right, that it may be necessary that you come out of the Pentecostal church. So a few months later, we in fact did. a group of us, me and Vivian, John and Dawn, Len and Elsie, Anne Garrard and her husband, and a number of other people. We found we had to leave. And then we used to meet in David Halls, that's Dawn's brother, and John. We met in David and Wendy's house in Crow Lane, which is
Bible Society.
off of Wellburn Lane. And we met as a house group.
Okay.
And John, being John, had different ideas what church is about. John has always emphasised relationships. When we were in the house, we all related to each other, cared for one another. One Sunday, we all arrived for the meeting. David said, we're not having a meeting today. We're all going to get in the vans and cars. We're all going to Southend, have an ice cream. But you can't do that. It's Sunday. You can't do that. And life was so different.
Wow.
John and David was overseeing this. So there was about a dozen or 14 of us in that little group who had come out. And we were meeting regular every Sunday and doing things together. So our marriage went well.
Yeah.
We didn't...
You stayed at John and Dawn's the first
John and
fortnight.
Dawn, you may have heard him say this story. They lived in over some shops in Becontree Avenue when they first got married. And as they was on holiday, as our marriage started, they wanted us to have their flat. So we mentioned to his landlord, and his landlord said, you can't do that. No. He said, I will do away with the lease. You're not letting anyone else stay there while you're away. So John knew he'd heard from God. So he went ahead with it, and he let us have the flat, and it just flowed through.
Wow.
John will tell you that story.
Yeah.
And John just ignored what the landlord said. He done what God said. We was there for a fortnight, and then they come back. Then we moved back to Viv's mum and dad's for 10 months. So we then still in the little house group. So we got married. So we, as husband and wife and the group, we all go back to Greenside for another long weekend.
Yeah.
But this time from Bradford comes Bryn Jones for the weekend.
Yeah.
So we see Bryn, he knew us because he had been around, we'd say we knew him. How were the newlyweds doing? Well, we're okay, Bryn, but Vivian wants to have children. I definitely do not want children. Why is that? What had happened to me, I was frightened that I might unintentionally, some way, hurt a child.
Emotion.
And I did not want that responsibility. I never wanted to hurt a child that it would suffer the things that I'd suffered.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. He said, and I'm telling you, Alan, from the Lord, if you had children, God has done wonderful things for you. It will be even more so. Okay, Bryn. So we took that on board. I'd been on lots of medication and thought, can I be a dad? Would it affect my...
Yeah.
Could they be deformed or something? It's just the thoughts the devil puts in your mind. But anyway, we took Bryn's word, and
I fell straight away, didn't I?
she fell pregnant straight away. So under the hospital, she came tubbier. So she then had a 6-monthly examination, or she went to see the doctor at 6 months.
When I was 5 months, they gave me a scan. Well, the stuff must have been rubbish in them days because they couldn't find 2. They found 1 baby.
Well, they weren't looking for 2.
So by the 6 months, they said, you're just so big. Let's give you an X-ray. And then they found there was 2 of them. One was made to the back of me. Apparently that's why we couldn't see it on the scan. And I was in shock. And because he didn't know, because he was at work. And my mum was shocked when I told her she's waiting in the waiting room. And she said, oh, you poor little thing, 2 at once, And I was thinking, what am I going to do with 2 babies? How scary is that? What will I do with 2? Because I've been the only child. I had no experience of babies or nothing. Yeah. And so I got the bus and went to Alan's mum's, waiting for him to come in at lunchtime.
I was going to go in lunchtime to my mum's.
And I couldn't let Nanny Mary, as I called her, I didn't let Mary see me had been
My
crying.
mum.
I'd been crying.
So
And,
she
he's
comes to the
doing-
door with tears in her eyes. Oh, what's the matter? What's the matter? She said, "You're going to have twins." And I'm saying, praise God.
In fact, his
praise
mummy
God,
jumped up in the air.
Praise God.
Praise the Lord, he says. Yeah, I've been restored.
God is
you know,
abundant.
two
God
at
is
once.
abundant.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the guy who didn't want children.
He didn't want
The
sons.
most wonderful
He didn't want
thing
sons.
that ever happened to me. Holding them two little ones.
Wow. As you look back over your life as an individual and your lives together as a couple, who has God shown himself to be to you both?
This is the guy who didn't go outside the door for 8 years who wanted to commit suicide. God said, no, you're not. I've got plans for you. I've got plans for you. This is nothing to do with us. It's God who gives the glory. I hope we encourage people. I can't boast in it. She can't boast in it. We're just us.
Yeah.
Just that funny little couple in the church. That funny little couple. And that is God, Nick. But there's other stories.
Thank you so much for your time, for both
That's
of you.
all right. It's our pleasure.
Being part of this church community, and like I say, I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't known you both, and the love, the care, the probably at least nearly 35 birthday cards. You know, I feel blessed and privileged to be part of the same church community as you both.
It's God.
Yeah.
It's not us. It's God.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Alan and Viv, thank you so much.